We'll just give it a minute. I'm waiting a few folks. One's for a demo, and he'll join in a second, and then someone else wants to discuss another topic as well.
Hello, hi everyone.
Hey, Tushar, thanks for joining.
Hi, hi. Sorry for the delay. Sorry for the delay.
Always. Hey, Dennis, as well. Hey. All right, we'll give it one more minute. I think there's someone else who wants to discuss something else on the agenda, and then we'll just get started. All right, let's get started. I'll start sharing my screen, and we'll look at the agenda and also the usual housekeeping. So hey, welcome everyone to the community call on the 21st of August this month. I changed it for a week from last week as we want Tushar to demo some performance tests that he's been doing. As usual, there's an antitrust policy notice of the Hyperledger Foundation, the Linux Foundation. So if you don't agree with this antitrust policy, and of course the meeting is being recorded, please leave the call now if you don't want to be part of this. Today, in the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about 131 that we released a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk about performance testing. That Tushar has been doing a bit of testing with different public chains and what he's been doing in that area. A bit of a Q&A, I think. And then any other topics we want to raise. I think there was someone on Discord that wanted to talk about the Fabric token SDK. So I'm hoping they join and talk about that. So a few weeks ago, we released 131. There are a significant amount of fixes in here, including CV fixes, fixes around upgrading from a 1.2x version to a 1.3 version. There were some issues with the way the listeners were being created and the way, so between 1.2 and 1.3, we changed the way the event streams work between the FireFly core engine and the blockchain connectors. We isolated so that we would have a separate event stream for each namespace instead of sharing the same event stream for each plugin across namespaces. We wrote some code in here to recreate those event streams, and there was a few bugs in there that we fixed as part of 131 for it to be more reliable and make sure that we do not miss any events. But one of the really important additions to 131 was this feature that has been going on for a long time. I think the PR was open maybe for 8-9 months. And this is the PR that Nico started this time, and I've carried on with it, which is the ability to enable multiple filters on contract listeners. So in 130 and before, you could tell FireFly for the supported blockchain connectors, of course, hey, can I listen to a specific event from a contract, right? From a smart contract. This would work with Fabric and with Ethereum. I think we're not there yet with Tezos, but I think we'll get there. Um, and we realized that a lot of users wanted to manage these a bit more efficiently by creating one listener, but with multiple filters. So they could listen to multiple events from the same smart contract instead of having to manage multiple of these contract listeners for one single smart contract that might be emitting multiple events. So we implemented and migrated the current API, and it's backwards compatible. And we even wrote a little page on the website to show you how you could use multiple filters, how the ordering still works. It's very important that we still maintain ordering of events under a single topic. So applications consuming events get reliable delivery and order delivery, and how you can still use single filters with this API, how we decide when to migrate an existing contract listener filter to the multiple filter format. So and in some cases we don't migrate it because it's a patch release. We don't want to break functionality in existing applications. And we also extended, because we're now running multiple filters, all these filters have a specific signature to be able to identify what they're listening to and what events. In the case of Ethereum, there's a specific thing called index fields, where these are fields that can be indexed and added to the logs in Ethereum. We had to extend the signature that we use to generate these contract listeners and filters to differentiate between different functions where some arguments are indexed and some aren't, because Ethereum does not give us that difference. If you look at ABI specifications in Ethereum and ABI signatures, the difference between these two functions, there's no difference when you generate the signature of the event. But in order to differentiate and make sure that we could support multiple filters that can listen to different types of event, even though their signatures might be the same in Ethereum, we had to come up with a new format where we had to document which fields were indexed so we could differentiate them. So there's a whole explanation here around how we handle duplicate filters in the API, so you cannot listen to the same event twice, how we check for duplicate listeners. So if you created a listener that's listening for the same 3 events as someone else, how would that work? And also backwards compatibility. So how listeners with one single filter work, how you can still create those, how existing ones won't be migrated. And there's examples here of the old format and the new format. So you can see in the new format, you now have an array of filters. You can still reference an interface, right? A contract interface, how we're used to it, a location where you want to listen to. In this case, it's an Ethereum example, and you can reference, you can put both multiple of these filters, right? In this case, in this example, we're listening to two events from different smart contracts, but we still have this topic order, so we can get those events in a specific order. So it's really interesting how we implemented this. There's loads of information in the PR. There was a lot of back and forth here between myself and Peter, trying to understand what is the correct spelling and how we could put this in a patch release. So yeah, I'm sure that in the future I'll do a demo on this when we have some sort of meetup with the Hyperledger Foundation and show you what you can do with this. The other thing that we changed as part of this PR is the root signature of the contract listener. So what you could do, as a lot of applications need this, a lot of Web3 applications are gonna call to FireFly and say, "Hey, I create a listener. Is it still there? Like, have I created it?" And it's very difficult for you to have to rebuild the whole listener with all the filters you want to understand. They created the listener with the right filter, with the right location, etc. So what we've done is we'll build a new signature format that includes the location and includes all the filters when there are multiple filters. So you can very easily query FireFly to say, if my listeners be created, and we also added a new API called, I think we called it contract listener slash signature, which is going to give you back the hash of the blockchain listener. So now you can know, you can now use your application, maybe a startup, to be able to identify if the contract listener is created correctly in FireFly, and you can go ahead with your application. So that was one of the main things we had 1.3, but I look forward to other fixes that we also put here around, as I said, CVEs, documentation, and a lot of fixes around retry logics for upgrading listeners. There's a new version on the website for 1.3. So now we've moved up to the 1.31 version. And I think for me, I think it's important that we keep this cadence of releases. So when we see features like this that we want to get in, we try to release a few times, more patch releases more frequently. I think there was a big gap between the 1.22 release to 1.30. And I think a few community calls ago we said, okay, could we release more often? Can we have more point fixes, right? So I think we want to get into that mindset of releasing more patch fixes like this one, where we might have some features, but a lot of it is making the code more robust and fixing problems. Any questions on the 131? Um, okay, now yet one other thing I wanted to mention. It was something that got merged recently that was quite substantial. For those of you that want to run FireFly in Kubernetes, we have a set of Helm charts that can help you run a FireFly stack. So what this will do is it will run a Besu chain, and it will also run all the FireFly components. In this case, it's the setup is for a kind cluster, but you can install it in any version of Kubernetes that you wish. We released a new version last week, which includes a really substantial change that was contributed by Nico and by Sam, to rebuild the Helm charts to be more user-friendly. So now you have scripts to be able to enable multi-party, and they're all updated to 131. So they all have the image of 131, and there are a lot, and they also import the Besu Helm chart, so it's really easy for you to deploy Besu in Cube as well with FireFly. Looking forward, I think something like a 1.0 of this Helm charts would be good with more features, maybe different blockchain flavors, right? Maybe Fabric, etc., could come into these Helm charts and help people develop in Kubernetes. But yeah, I look forward for people trying this out. I've had a lot of questions on Discord around, hey, how can I run FireFly in Kubernetes? And then we have these Helm charts that we spend a lot of time working on, and we've recently released them for 131. Along with obviously the usual updates of we update the FireFly CLI to 131, and we make sure to pull all the images from all the components. All right, so if there's no questions on 131, the next thing on the agenda was there was a discussion on Discord. I think it was a couple of weeks ago or even more than that. Tusha was experimenting using FireFly with different testnets, public testnets, and I think you were playing around with different confirmation numbers, with different block periods, with the different block periods that these testnets offer. And I think you want to share some insight on what testing you did and what you found out by using FireFly there. So I'll hand it over to you, Tusha.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. So let me share my screen.
Go for it.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yep, all good. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. So first I would like to show the basic setup that whatever I have done, and then I will show you that how exactly I am testing. I have right now prepared the testing for Avalanche, Binance, Polygon, Optimism, and Sequoia as well. So let me show you that this particular smart contract, one second. Yeah, so this is the simplest smart contract that I'm performing my testing with, and I have also done the Postman setup as well. So starting with so starting with Avalanche, I have already done the setup. So let me start the Firefly for Avalanche.
So in here you followed the tutorial we have to run the FireFly CLI against an Avalanche RPC endpoint, right?
Exactly, exactly. Right, right, right. So this was the node RPC URL that I used. So I have already done the deployment of my smart contract, and I also perform the testing, but I'm going to perform it again. But I won't be doing the chain code deployment. So here you can see that this is my Avalanche testnet, and this is the particular account that was being created by Avalanche, and I have funded it for the testing purpose as well. Okay, let it start.
So what were you trying to prove by using Avalanche? Were you trying to test something specific with Firefly as to like
Y-
performance, being able to?
yes. I'm going to invoke the smart content functions, and sometime what happens is in case of Avalanche, I'm able to get success within a minute. It is giving me faster response, but in case of optimism, or in case of Sepolia, I'm not. My last 10 transactions are always in pending state. So this is what I was going to show. So I can show you for Avalanche. It won't take much time. So it has started. Uh, Let me first show you so that if I hit a transaction, let me set any random value, 71. Okay. So transaction is being done. If I come here, okay, I can see the transaction. Also, if I come here on the Explorer, I can see, yeah, the transaction is being done in last 1 second. Uh, for Avalanche, I will get the response that yes, this particular transaction is being done. Mm, okay. It's taking time for this Avalanche for this time. Uh, Let me start the performance testing that the way I'm testing it. So basically what I'm going to do is with the JMeter, I'm going to um, invoke this store function with a duration of 5 seconds. And I'm going to do it for 25 times. And then in case of Avalanche, I get the success quite faster. But in case of Optimism and in case of Sepolia, I'm getting my last 10 transaction always remain in pending. So as you can see, in case of Avalanche, I'm getting the success for my pending transactions. I can also start my listener as well. Okay, already I have created one for this. I can start it here. Yeah, transaction submitted, and I'm also getting the success as well. You can see.
So your JMeter test, you're submitting transactions to your sample contract,
Yes, correct.
and your test um just expecting a 201 from Firefly and then saying success, I'm going to do the next one, or is it
No. I'm not waiting for success from Firefly. I'm just submitting the transactions.
okay? So where are you capturing the is your JMeter test
Okay.
capturing the success of the transaction by listening to an event from Firefly saying the transaction has succeeded, or you're just looking into this UI and looking in the Postman WebSocket to see?
Okay. I got it. So what I'm doing is that this is the way I can invoke an smart content function. So what I'm doing is that for via my JMeter, I'm just invoking this particular API again and again, and with a different value. So what I'm expecting is that if I hit even if I hit this particular function with 100 different values, I should get a response for my 100 different transactions. But in case of optimism and in case of Sepolia, my last few transaction, 10 transactions or 5 transaction, I don't get the success. In case of Avalanche, it is giving me success for each and every transaction, but not in case of optimism Sepolia. So this is what.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
um, I'm just trying to break down. There are different ways to do performance, and there are different ways to measure performance in the system, especially around Firefly. And what is considered a success or not, right? So, um, and these are configured at different levels in the stack as well. So when you say that you get success when you invoke, is it that you just get a 201 like you had there in Postman with the fact that Firefly has accepted your transaction? Like this one was going to say, hey, cool. Tusha, we've accepted your transaction to call this smart contract. It's in pending because we're waiting to submit the transaction to the actual C chain in Avalanche, right? And once we get enough confirmations that the transaction has been added to X subsequent blocks, then we will mark this transaction as successful and we'll send you an event back to your subscription saying your blockchain invocation has been succeeded. So one way of measuring performance is you configure your JMeter or your tool, and we have a similar tool called Firefly Performance CLI,
Mm-hmm.
where what it does exactly this. It will um, submit a transaction. In this case, it's for Ethereum. Submit a transaction to an Ethereum chain,
Mm-hmm.
and then it will wait until that CLI gets an event back from Firefly. So it's not only measuring, it's measuring the performance of the whole system from the CLI.
Mm.
So
Okay.
here you're just submitting transactions, but I don't see that you're measuring how many transactions have gone through in X amount of time, like a TPS number, or how long these transactions are taking from JMeter from a tool that you've built. I think what you've shown to me is, well, we'll look at the Sepolia is, if I click this button X amount of times, at some point, somewhere in the system, transactions don't go through. And what I'm trying to understand is that part of the system where transactions don't go through Firefly? Is it that the RPC endpoint has a rate limiter and not allowing you to submit more transactions? Is it something else? Is it that the event listener for Firefly is not being able to find the confirmations for that transaction and never putting your transaction succeeded? So I'm just trying to break down the different layers of the stack so you can investigate more efficiently, basically.
Okay. I got your point. I got your point. Um, I just want to add one point here. The way you said that using this CLI, I can do a better performance testing. So that is not my concern. So let me tell you that part again. So like in this case, that if I hit it like 25 times, I got the success for all the transactions. But in case of optimism and Sepolia, if I do this, then my last every time, not like few transaction, but in case of uh, every time, the last 5 transaction or 10 transactions remains in pending. So you got that point? You got
Yeah.
my point?
So what
Yeah.
you're measuring, okay, so one thing is measuring throughput or latency, right? What you're measuring here is what will could be the throughput for each chain. You're telling me that for Avalanche, okay, I can submit 25 transactions and even more, and maybe that's the total throughput, and they all succeed. But you're telling me that for Sepolia, for Optimism, which
Mm-hmm.
is obviously a layer two chain, it has a longer finality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially because it's layer two.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying me that the throughput is X amount of time and then I see them in pending. Do the pending ever resolve afterwards?
No, no.
Okay.
Unless I hit a one another transaction, it always remains in a pending state. And earlier I was getting that issue for Polygon, but today I tested that it is working fine for Polygon, but not for last two, Sepolia and Optimism. And I did not check with others.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so I think I understand the problem. So you're telling me somewhere along in the FireFly stack, when communicating to Optimism Sepolia, there's a point where if I send too many transactions, the subsequent X amount, N amount, are stuck in pending. So there's some sort of throughput or some sort of rate limiting in Sepolia. Or it could be that somewhere in FireFly is not able to process those transactions and not submitting those to the chain. So obviously, it's a community call, but I think we could take this conversation to Discord. I think I have a few steps that you could take to maybe investigate a bit more where those transactions are in the blockchain connector, at what state they are, not at this FireFly level, but a bit
Okay.
deeper in the blockchain connector.
Okay.
Maybe if we can correlate that with the blockchain indexers that these testnets have, understand if it has been submitted correctly, and understand if the service you're using, the RPC endpoints that you're using for Optimism, for example, have some sort of rate limiting or throughput or etc. that you might be also hitting. I kind of want to narrow down the problem to the different areas in FireFly and in the chain.
Yeah, got it, got it. Just one more thing that I would like to add, that I also tested this particular RPC URL uh, with my own Node.js script where I wrote signing a transaction and submitting using this particular RPC URL only, and then I was able to uh, perform the same action. I mean, if I'm hitting X number of transactions, all transactions were going into success state. If I hit 25, then I was getting the success for the 25. But in case of Firefly, always some of them are remaining in pending. If after 10 second or 15 second I hit another transaction, then it goes to success in case of Firefly. So yeah, that was just last point that I wanted to add.
That's Tusha, that is a great point. So you're telling me you've wrote a Web3 JS, for example, script,
Yes.
where you were signing your own transactions, submitting them directly to this Sepolia. I didn't realize it was an Infura RPC URL. Um, and you're seeing everything go through successfully. But when you do this with Firefly, at some point in time, after you send X amount of transactions, some are stuck in pending. So I think the next step here, and I can post something on Discord after the call, would be, hey, okay, let's dive deeper into Firefly. I think you've just proven that something in Firefly in the layer of the blockchain connector or even the Firefly core is not correctly processing transactions that are being sent to this optimism chain. And so I can give you some tips on where to look at in the transaction manager and the logs to understand where the issue could be.
Sure, sure, sure. I can. Sure.
Awesome. That's really good. Thanks for sharing that. Any questions for Disha? Cool. Thanks for that, Tushar. Thanks for joining and sharing this. This is awesome.
Yep, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think I want to open up the floor for anyone to join. I think there was a question on Discord around the Fabric Token SDK. I think if that person has joined, if they want to chat about that, or anyone else can raise any questions today. How does one apply to the incubator? Um, which incubator do you mean here, Baba? Do you mean the Hyperledger incubator? Right. I think that would be directly with the Hyperledger Foundation. So I think there may be um, maybe the general channel in the Discord. If you're in the Discord, would be good. I think you can get people from the Hyperledger Foundation team answer you there. This community call is more focused for the Firefly project. Okay. One final thing, I think I wanted to mention is we're actually working towards having a brew formula to be able to install the FireFly CLI. David here that's joined today is helping out with that, and he's contributing to brew a formula to build the FireFly CLI. So now you, for those that are using Mac, could do a brew install FireFly, and hopefully that's an easier installation. And ideally as well, we could possibly have a head or a latest version of the CLI so that we don't always rely on users having to pull down a branch and build the main if we haven't released the version. Because maybe a few of you have been aware that we try to keep in sync the versions of the FireFly CLI to the versions of the FireFly release. So if every time we push something into FireFly CLI to fix something or a new feature, those users might not get that for a long time. So yeah, feel free. There's a PR and there's an issue on the open source if people have any thoughts there. Okay, if there's no other questions, I guess I'll end the call there. Thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, feel free to ping me if you have any other topics for future community calls. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks. Thank you.